Art reflects life, and life is about conflict. I say this often, and I adamantly believe it. Often, art will mask its conflict. You aren't really sure what the art is. But here, that is not the case. The very first verse of Injury Reserve's artistic shock, By the Time I Get to Phoenix, opens the void that we fall into. Ritchie derides our likely expectation that he'll ease into the subject matter at hand, that he'll open up with compromise to the world, that we can meet in the middle and pat each other on the back for anything we share in common, even slightly. He asks the follow-up, what is the elephant in the room? Let's talk to him, come on. Our political conflicts, the death of band member Groggs, and our recent societal, artistic, political shift away from compromise, an abrasive utterance of the name of who we're really fighting. Strangely, these two conflicts don't seem to be divided much at all. The rest of the album, outside of this seemingly thesis statement, suggests a focused fight, not a broad one. This may be to say that the fight is too broad to be narrowed down into discrete quantity, but I would contend the death of Groggs and our societal conflict are likely delivered by the same illness, so our conflict is one and the same. This is furthered in that much of the album is recorded ahead of the death. The timeline is blurred, as the cause and effect are unknown, lost in a singular essence. I said seemingly thesis statement because those prior lines are more of a pre-thesis. The thesis, the point we will develop over our journey, is delivered in the outro of Outside. Opening, as we walk through the valley of death, together, with the implied following line of, we will see no evil and fear no evil. We do not hear this line because we are not there yet. It's overly optimistic and naive to think we would hear or see no evil. Groggs' death hangs heavy on the whole of the album. It's a shift in not only emotional state, but how we approach the world. Maybe it's too late. We can't accept and agree to disagree anymore. Sometimes it really isn't just an opinion. Groggs' cause of death is unlisted, at least as far as I have been able to find. But a 32-year-old dying without listed cause is very telling. The same man being one who's spoken outwardly about the physical damage drugs and alcohol, means of coping with despair, have done to his body and mind. Either direct or indirect suicide is likely our culprit. It's a miserable situation, and unfortunately all too common. A world filled with such massive but obvious and in-your-face problems we are helpless in changing becomes a difficult place to achieve peace interpersonally or internally. At the time of writing this, I was reading a book by Leo Tolstoy called Resurrection, which largely focuses on the flaws of land being a commodity and how reflective of larger societal attitudes this is. He says the purpose of laws and economy are not to best allocate resource or best accentuate life, but to maintain the state of things. And this is a really dominant and complete viewpoint on a lot of politics, the maintenance of social structure and hierarchy as the end goal. In my opinion, horrific end goal. It hurts my head to think about how little has changed, and to read this book, which published over a century ago, so deeply reflects current attitudes. Having read much of Russian literature pre-Bolshevik Revolution, it's scary how fully it seems to reflect late 20th century modern climates. And knowing what was to come for them, I wonder if this album is similar to Resurrection in being a sign of the bridge between silent agony and seeing the predictions Tupac on the end of To Pimp a Butterfly made come true. I'd end this paragraph with a cliche, but I digress. However, I don't think I have. All of this is directly tangent to and relevant within this album, and the conflicts it sets out to explore. All art needs its context, and when the artist directly tells us where to look, we would be fools not to. A man who laments the world as he sees what it is dies of despair, a month after we have riots in the streets over the disgusting murder of his fellow black man. While we sit immobilized in our homes fearing a virus we still cannot contain due to our lack of cooperation, and the powers that be who likely don't actually care about its spread or its impact. Variants line Big Pharma's pockets to this day and counting. And is all this truly responsible for Groggs' death? It seems Injury Reserve sure thinks so. So what makes this album special? The art of this album comes in its delivery, in its emotional atmosphere, and in its musical expression. The swooping, gulping, synthetic production styles feel consuming. It illustrates you running from something as you hear how there's no saving you. And notice the you gets its own space in the bars, a clear image of who that you is. The song I'm referring to, Superman That, is also fascinating in its title, delivery, and is maybe the best example of musical progression on the album. The title feels almost like an ironic challenge. The idea of a Superman who can somehow save everyone feels ridiculous. There is no saving. Vocals blend into the production much like on Earl Sweatshirt's Some Rap Songs, and mimics Some Rap Songs' ability to blend these elements together into one direct singular point of emotion. The production is truly out there, which was actually a direct request from Groggs himself, fittingly. But the most interesting thing about it, and of the musicality on this record as a whole to me, is that this sort of post-rap style is something in the album that emerges from the core of hip-hop, not from the fringes. This isn't Death Grips, or Suicide Boys, or Drain Gang, or some more fringe group making this. It's a fairly traditional rap group. It is growth from the very core of our beloved art form. If the inception of rap was rebellion against specifically racial oppression, we found our sort of finale in To Pimp a Butterfly, which progressed this to its logical endpoint. Yet, as Dan told us, it was a failing. Now, we are here with no path to take. We are post-rap. Maybe it's not a genre, but a new chapter. And I can't say for sure, but maybe that's what this album signals. The enemy feels too powerful now. The battle has been too long. The world feels tired and despondent. Ain't no savin' me or you. SS San Francisco needs little explanation. It directly comments on the exact issues I've been explaining. Footwork in a Forest Fire opens with a crushing posthumous verse from Groggs. He crafts apocalyptic imagery of a panic-stricken sky and poison air. Friends come together to ride or to riot. In a very clever line, he apologizes to his mama for being polite, converse to the cliche, to show how far from polite we are. Then, try to take life, try to take rights, look to heaven, look to hell, where does it go? The next couple tracks continue our violence of lyric and our tumult of sound, leading into one of the most genius songs of recent time. Top picks for you. I think that reducing this album to a simple political statement would be a massive underselling of what this piece is. If I have led you to believe that, then maybe you're not hearing me, or maybe I'm the one failing. But allow me to extend where we are getting to. Top Picks for You is maybe the most progressive song in its ideas on the album. In a chilling and eerie meditation, Ritchie describes life now without Groggs, but with his presence still alive. His details, his digital footprint, his continually analyzed persona from streaming algorithms, and the patterns he's imprinted on family and friends. He laments the gray of how these separate, the frailty of the ghost of his friend he still sees. The current post-internet age has maligned even our grieving process with death. A person exists in the digital to an extent we may not be capable of reconciling with yet. And in a way, the album itself mirrors this idea, as the band is able to craft Groggs' visions, ideals, and memory into its emotional focus, content, and musical progressiveness, even after his death. This is further fleshed out in the next track, which continues to detail the ubiquity of the internet and the blurred lines it shares in reality. This recalls something like Radiohead's OK Computer, famous for this idea. But while the first reaction may be to call them similar ideas, I don't think that they are. The album here isn't predicting technological isolation. It is acknowledging it as a far-removed past and looking forward to what comes next. Postpartum progresses isolation to lack of identity, where we find that everyone seeks to copy others out of fear. Fear to be different, fear to be wrong, fear to be ridiculed, fear of failure. When you see constant numeric metrics of approval in a life largely captured online, this isn't a surprise, but it's nothing new either. It positions this strange cycle of seeking to replicate each other, but also deriving the affirmation to seek individuality from this same approval. It's a contradiction. We praise individuality, but also try to copy those who have it. This means of new individuality are confused. The point is that this relates back to the album's inception. The album is the pursued individuality. Knees and By Storm bring our album to its climax. Knees hurt me when I grow creates a metaphor with several excellent layers of meaning. The first and most obvious being physical growing pains. But later in life, the same physical growing pains is not out of growth, but from being grown, fully grown, old. And from our being fully grown, we're now unable to progress in life simply by aging. We demand the much more difficult task of spiritual, emotional, mental growth. Our knees hurt looking back at the innocence of childhood, the simpler times of the past, and most importantly, the loss of ones we love as the loss of their presence becomes a growing pain itself. We get a verse from Groggs about these same feelings haunting us. A cheeky joke about not being able to grow vertically, but growing out as he gets fatter, specifically from drinking. His family watches, makes jokes, not seeing the serious implications. This bleeds into a shared verse that's really more of a conversation between Richie and Groggs. It's a really touching moment as they find growth putting down the bottle together. I picture Richie speaking with Groggs from beyond and coming to terms with his own demons in the way he's learned from his friend, manifesting him there with him. But I think our most telling growth is in the idea that we so immediately and so fully understand as a collective that the conflicts themselves matter little, and that it's the presence of conflict, a constant of life, that people succumb to. Injustice is eternal. Inequality is as human as anything, or it rains, it pours, but damn, it's really pouring, as our album concludes with. That's not to say not to fight against something as immutable as the rain itself, but that now there is an understanding that suffering isn't a removable aspect of life, only a shifting one. How do we continue on? Do we get our friends to put down their bottles, or do we fight oppressive social structures? Is the pursuit itself what we need? These are the current world growing pains. The fact that we understand this and our knees buckle is that understanding. There's something deeply comforting found within the production of our final song. It's somber, but reassuring. It sounds like something that would play in the final cathartic scene of a movie, where the character incurs great growth, but with great cost. It's my favorite piece of production on the album, and one of my favorites in all of hip-hop. The lyrical contrast lends further gravity to its optimism. We see the symbol of rain be outlined as struggle, conflict, misery, positioned as an immutable, naturally inherent element of life. The last verse of the album is fittingly ambivalent. It opens with a statement of collective empathetic understanding and togetherness, commenting that the rain may be knee-high to you, but to him it's up to his shoulders. The symbolic rain does not have a standardized depth. It's a drizzle to some, but a flood to others. Groggs is then positioned as the planet which kept the rest of them in orbit, and now, after the storm has passed, they ask who'll hold it down. They don't know, but they'll laugh and they'll have a good time because that's what he would have wanted, and because what else is there to do? But I think they, and hopefully us as listeners, will come out paying more attention to the rain at our friends' feet than simply feeling out our own. I don't think this album seeks or even wants to come to a tangible conclusion in terms of an answer, because there is no answer to a prescient conflict, or maybe prescient awareness of a current conflict. Maybe the goal is to fight more than it is to win. By the time I get to Phoenix, there's no saving any of us. Our knees hurt when we grow. When we don't, we face these conflicts together. Lament how late we've come to understand this fully and collectively, and just now we put down the bottle. They wish they faced it together more, faced it with Groggs, maybe put down his bottle, and it's too late for that now, and they've come to accept that. Nonetheless, even as it hurts their knees, they have grown and they hope that you see it too. And maybe you help the Groggs in your life to put down their bottle, or that you put down yours. That we find our solace not in silent misery, but in emboldened passion through each other as an enemy we no longer agree to disagree with. We fight even the rain.